Today is technically the 19th and tomorrow is the 20th. But the thing is that my today is your tomorrow, or my tomorrow is your today. The 20th of July means that the vlog is now 1 year old. I have made it through an entire year of doing this. This would be 158 or 159 episodes, which is crazy to me. It's just insane to me to think that I have documented half of the last year of our life. I really didn't know if I would make it this long when I started this journey. I think now that the vlog is a year old, though, it's time that I tell a story that I've been avoiding and a lot of you have been asking about, and that is, some of you say, what's wrong with Hudson, or what happened to Hudson, or what's the story with Hudson, or why is Hudson the way that she is, what is her condition? So I'm going to try to tell that story to you for this 1 year anniversary, 1 year birthday episode. If you're easily upset that maybe you skip some parts of this, maybe you skip this altogether, maybe just leave me a comment saying that you didn't want to see maybe the harder stuff to see, but nothing too terrible. It just depends on how you handle things. That being said, I'm gonna try to keep some humor in some of this, but it is a tough story for me to tell. But sometimes humor is the best way in dealing with hard subjects. So I guess I'll start at the beginnings when Casey and I met. Casey and I met on 5/5/5. That's Cinco de Mayo of 05. I was a bartender and Casey was a customer. She walked into the bar that night. It wasn't very busy. I just happened to notice her. I gave my business card to her friend and he gave it to her, and less than a week later she had emailed me, and then we went to dinner and we kind of hung out for a while, and then we decided to start dating, and things were really awesome. We hit it off really well. And for that summer we played a lot of volleyball and we did a lot of partying, and we were just a couple of young kids in love. She invited me to go to Chicago for her birthday, and while we were there she took me to see my first musical, which was Wicked. It was wicked awesome, but the name of the musical was Wicked. I'm sure many of you have heard of it. By October, I moved to Kansas City, which was just an hour away. And by June, Casey moved to Kansas City with me into our old place that we moved. You saw us move to our new place in January. We moved from that place that we were at for 11 and a half years. In October of 07, we got married. We had a wonderful wedding surrounded by very close family and friends, very small wedding. We actually got married in her grandparents' garage of all places. My friend was the officiant. He's a lawyer and he married us, and it was kind of a non-traditional wedding. I moved here to be a flair bartender, to compete, and Casey supported me in that. She traveled a lot with me. I traveled a lot. I did a lot of flipping bottles. I was in competitions in Las Vegas, and I even took a job in Bahrain, which it didn't work out, but I spent 10 days there and came back. And while I was in Bahrain, Casey was actually pregnant at the time with Hudson. I came back home after 10 days and went back to work at my job at this bar that was rock and roll themed. And so I got to do a lot of flair there and crazy hairstyles and awesome costumes for different holidays and events that we had. And it was just a really cool time. That's Billy right there that I've talked about, the guy who gave me a couple of drones, and I've told you to go check his channel out. Go check it out, links down there. Crazy time. I had blue mohawks and crazy makeup, just rock and roll lifestyle, blowing fire, meeting celebrities, riding motorcycles, just this whole crazy kind of rock and roll lifestyle. And I knew it was gonna slow down, but I didn't realize how much it was gonna slow down. Casey was the epitome of a perfect pregnancy. She ate healthy. Her doctor was just always talking about how great her pregnancy was, how just textbook perfect it was. We even painted her belly one time to look like a basketball, because we were talking about we're probably gonna have a tall kid because we're both tall, and Casey's family's tall and my family's not short, and how our kid will maybe play basketball. We didn't even know we were having, by the way. We knew we were having a boy or a girl, but that was it. We referred to the baby as Bean, and then we actually decided on the name Hudson, and I actually said I wanted the name Hudson, and Casey said she liked the name Hudson also. I wanted the name Hudson for a boy. She wanted the name Hudson for a girl. We had this perfect pregnancy, picture perfect. Her OB, the baby doctor, basically was always talking about how great the pregnancy's going and how Casey's doing everything she's supposed to do. Casey labored at home for almost a full day. It wasn't crazy labor. We were just there, and we had a doula that was at the house and checking with her, as well as a birth coach. And Casey was having labor pains, but it wasn't anything too extreme. And then we traveled to the hospital. The doula said, I think it's time maybe we head to the hospital. And I want to say we were at that hospital by 1 or so in the afternoon, something like that. Casey was in the hospital laboring, under being monitored every 15 minutes or so. The nurse would come in and do a check, and she had a heart rate monitor going on her belly. She was just going through the labor. Nothing was alarming. Very textbook. And then the nurse came in to do a check, and came back with she had blood on her glove, we'll just put it that way, and she looked very concerned, and she left the room, and they called our baby doctor. It was actually not our doctor, it was the doctor who was on call to do that, and they rushed Casey out of the room for an emergency C-section. And I was holding it together pretty strong while they were getting everything prepared, but I was so scared. And I held it together as they left the room, and then once they got her out the door, Casey's mom was there, and the doula was there in the room, and I lost it right then. I didn't know what was happening. It was so frightening. And they asked me to put scrubs on, and I put on the outfit, and I went in to hold Casey's hand. It was a C-section at that time. We just thought there was some concern. We didn't know, And then Hudson was born. They did a C-section. They brought Hudson out through Casey's belly and took her over to the incubator, the warming table, which we knew was probably going to happen. They always take the baby and they clean the baby up, and then they give you the baby. But I went over to the table just to look at Hudson, and they actually told me to back up. They were nice but firm about it. They told me to back up, and that's when I thought, oh no, like, what's going on? I turned back to check on Casey. They wheeled Hudson out and took her into the NICU, and I didn't really get to see Hudson. I got a glimpse, and that was it. And then, but I didn't actually see Hudson. But they got Casey into recovery and took her into the room, and I was sitting there with her, and they let me go into the NICU to see Hudson, and this is what Hudson looked like when she was born. Say hi to mommy, Hudson. She was in this tent. She was beautiful. She was just the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen in my life. And And they didn't have any answers. They didn't have any answers for it. All they told us was that Casey had what's called a placental abruption. And I think it's best explained by, I put a link down here in the description for you guys if you want. You can go look up this YouTube video that talks about what a placental abruption is. It's a pretty simplified version. But basically the placenta, there's like a balloon that's filled with fluid that holds the baby inside of it. And the baby, we all have this belly button, and the baby has a belly button umbilical cord connected to the placenta. And the placenta and the walls of the uterus kind of have this intermeshing, and between these parts, the mother's blood flow is here and the baby's blood flow is here, and they trade oxygen and nutrients and waste products back to the mother. And so this is how babies get their oxygen. Well, an abruption happens when there's a separation between those. And Casey was, by the time they got her on the operating table, was 75% abrupted. And they said, had she lost any more blood, she might not even be here today. They had to give her 2 full transfusions of blood just to keep her alive. She was still talking through so much of this. Casey was so strong in her love for her daughter, her need to see her new daughter, that as weakened as she was by her blood loss, she was just begging to be able to go in and see her, but they wouldn't let her move, of course. But I got to go in there and see Hudson, and I brought that video back to Casey so she could see it. Hudson was born at 9:03 p.m. She was 8 pounds, 7.4 ounces. Casey was full term. Nothing should have gone wrong, but it did. At about 6 o'clock in the morning the next day, the doctor at the birth hospital suggested that we send Hudson to the children's hospital. And so at 6 o'clock in the morning, the ambulance paramedics showed up with this space pod that they put Hudson in. Just looked like she was ready to be loaded onto a spaceship and go visit the moon or something. It was a protective chamber, of course, and that's how they transported her. The birth hospital that we were at was actually a good 25 minutes south of where we lived. Casey still hadn't seen her daughter besides the video that I showed her. And in fact, Casey didn't even get to see Hudson until the 12th. Hudson was born on 10/9/10. And it was almost 3 days later before Casey got to hold her. So because Casey had a placental abruption, it robbed Hudson of that oxygen. She basically suffocated in utero during birth. So it's like when somebody drowns or suffocates. I mean, she got no oxygen to her brain, and that damaged her brain. And the technical term for that is, well, we call it HIE, because hypoxic ischemic encephalopathy is really hard to say. So 3 days of only seeing a video of her daughter that she carried for close to 10 months and worked so hard to get herself healthy enough to be allowed to leave the hospital. So she finally got to hold her daughter.
Just move her humidifier over the flow meter. Okay. You're welcome. There you go. Do you want to put the light on for pictures? That help?
Yeah. It's, to this day, one of the toughest things I've ever had to witness, but it's also one of the most inspiring. It's so, of course, it's hard. It's hard to talk about. Maybe you can see why I've avoided this for a year. I need to share this. I think that night when she was born, she had her eyes open in the NICU, but that was the last time I'd seen her eyes open for 8 days. She was basically in a coma, and we were told from day to day and sometimes hour to hour that either she was gonna be fine, or the next time you're talking to somebody, they're telling you to prepare for the worst, that she may never wake up, and then you're on this roller coaster of, well, things are looking good, things are looking up, and then again, well, maybe not. But after 8 days, she opened her eyes.
Oh, big yawn. Oh, big yawn. Big yawn.
And looked at us and made a few cooing sounds, and it was the best feeling ever. And that's when we started to have hope again. When she opened her eyes, we were like, man, she's, we're just open your eyes and we'll do whatever we can for you. And we're celebrating, and then that settled with, yeah, but she's gonna need to have that NG tube in her nose, and that's where her food is gonna go, because she'll never be able to eat by mouth, and she'll probably aspirate, and that can cause more problems or even kill her. And they were saying, well, Hudson has no gag reflex, and my stepmother just took it upon herself. She said, well, if she doesn't have a gag reflex, I'm going to test it. And she stuck her finger in her throat, and guess what? She gagged. and that sounds crazy, but there it was. And lo and behold, we tried bottle feeding, and guess what?
I'm going to put a little on her lips at first. See what time it is. Okay, 9:25. Just going to put it on her lips. Numb. Ooh. Numb.
Wow, that's some good stuff.
Okay, numb. Okay, I'm going to be teasing her a little bit.
She's like, can I have that?
She may get a little mad.
Good girl.
First meal.
She's like, oh, this is different. Yeah. Ooh, look at those bubbles. She's getting nice, strong sex. She's being nice and careful. She's like, I know this is different. There's something coming out. So that's nice. I mean, that's for some really good awareness, I think, versus like just going to town on it and then realizing before it's too late. Good girl. So you don't want her to be choking and coughing.
She did it. I mean, she did it. She took to it like a champ. And we had so much hope. Again, the roller coaster of hope and despair. And said she was strong enough to eat. Casey was able to start nursing her, and she nursed. She latched on, and on Halloween, we got to take her home. We dressed her in this little pumpkin outfit and put her in the car seat, this precious little cargo, and drove her home. Fortunately, we lived really close to the children's hospital, so what's usually maybe a 5 or 8 minute drive probably took us 20 minutes because I drove so careful to get her there. And we found some peace, and she was developing normally until about 3 months old. Then we started noticing her twitching, kind of spacing off at times.
Alright. Oh, a little bit still. Hey. Hi. She's freaked out. See, she usually when I've seen her twitch, she responds with me.
No, this is all new.
And stop doing that. There, back to crying. All right. Well, she's done twitching. I know.
I took that video so that I could show the neurologist what was going on, and he, of course, diagnosed her with epilepsy. She was eating by mouth. Casey nursed her for a year, and at 6 months we even moved her over to some solid foods, but the seizures kept getting worse. They were 40 and 50 seizures a day. 40 and 50 seizures a day. She had brain scans just to look at where the seizures were coming from. Structural focal epilepsy. HIE also causes microcephaly. So her head didn't grow. I mean, it grew, but it didn't grow at pace. I still think her head is right around, I haven't measured it in so long, it's still really small. And on her first birthday, we moved her over to the ketogenic diet. Her seizures started to go away, basically, with seizure meds that she was on, along with the ketogenic diet. We took her to Panama. We've taken her to Panama 3 different times for stem cell injections, which has made a tremendous difference. But she still was having trouble. She's always had trouble with reflux, but also with her gag. She has a gag reflex. Trust me, she has a gag reflex. She threw up a lot. And it was, she used to throw up so much. It was just part of our life. So at about 1.5 years, we got her a G-tube. So she's got the little button in her belly, and that's where all of her food goes, and that took care of a lot of the vomiting. She still had a lot of gagging and a lot of reflux, but we moved her over, I want to say 2.5 years ago, to an all blended diet. And with that and Prilosec, and her vomiting is pretty much gone. When I say pretty much gone, I mean it's once or twice a month versus 4 times a day on average. Her seizures, with the ketogenic diet and the meds and the stem cell therapies that we've gone for, went from 40 to 50 seizures a day to no seizures. We're able to come off all the seizure meds, but then they changed the formula of the ketogenic formula that she was on, and that's caused a lot of her seizures to come back. She went from 0 back up to 15 to 20 a day. And then we had to go back on seizure meds, and we got on that blended diet, and so now we're 8 to 12 seizures in a day, and they don't last as long, and they're not as severe as they used to be. And then because of her condition, because of the HIE, because of the hypoxic event, it leaves her with cerebral palsy. She doesn't communicate. She doesn't ambulate. She doesn't do anything for herself. So we do everything for her. It causes high tone, which is muscles being so tight that they're working against each other. So you'll see her in most of the videos. She's got these really tight fists. And we give her Botox for that, which helps relax the muscles. But tight fists, tight muscles everywhere. And those muscles being so tight causes hip dysplasia and bone deformment. Things like scoliosis, which is curvature of the spine. A whole host of things. go on with this girl. She gets foot cramps. She has what's called clonus. If you tap her foot, it does this jiggly thing. It freaks people out when they first see it, but apparently it's a result of the cerebral palsy, but it's not anything to worry about since we already know what her condition is. If you didn't have a pre-existing condition and a clonus showed up, there would be concern. But because she has a condition, they already know why it's there. The clonus doesn't hurt anything. So that one's kind of, in a dark way, fun for me sometimes. When people see it happen and they freak out. It's okay. It's okay. But here's the thing with Hudson, knowing the condition that our life is in, knowing that it's hard. It's hard for me to think that she's not gonna have a typical normal life. She's not probably going to go to college. My hopes are still there. I want this communication to happen and she can do anything. But when we talk about the reality of the situation, she's probably not going, I'm not gonna watch her graduate from school. I'm not gonna watch her walk down the aisle or give her hand in marriage or teach her to drive a car or all of these. I'm not gonna cheer her on at the basketball game or the soccer game or the spelling bee. I'm not saying those aren't ever gonna happen, but the reality is that I have to think now about that future. That's hard. It's really, really, really hard. But the plus side of things, because I like to think of the positives, the plus side of things is she's so easy to make happy. I mean, if she was a typical almost 7-year-old girl, I guarantee you I would be probably having arguments with her all the time because she wanted to wear her pink shoes today and I got her purple ones out, or I bought her the wrong Barbie, or she wanted to play with trucks, or she didn't like broccoli. Who knows? Because kids are moody. Hudson's moody, but all I gotta do is pick her up and snuggle her. All I gotta do is give her that squeaky sound. That's her most favorite thing in the world. I've been making that noise to her since she was in the NICU, and she so responds to it. She's changed our life. Your kids change your life, but she changed our life tremendously. She's touched so many people just by existing. I think if I had a time machine to be able to go back and change things, I don't know that I would, because I'm so different of a person, because so many people in Hudson's life are different people because of what happened to her. I don't know that we would recognize so much good in our life if it wasn't for her. I think I'd probably be taking it for granted like most people do. The only thing I want to change is things going forward. I hope that medical science catches up and somebody invents some way that helps her find a normal life in the future. I don't want to change the past. You can't change the past, but God, you can hope for the future. Just keep hoping. Don't just sit and hope. Do something about it, but keep hoping. Thank you guys for joining us on this journey. Thank you for always tuning in. Thank you for subscribing, for all of your comments, for being part of this for a year. That's awesome. Let's go. Let's do another year.